What's up, everybody? This is Tech G back with another video to help you successfully pass the CompTIA Security Plus certification exam. So let's get into it. In this video, we're going to be talking about a fundamental aspect of cybersecurity, and that is risk management. So this topic is not just about identifying potential threats, but also involves making strategic decisions to address and mitigate risk effectively. So whether you're securing a small business network or managing enterprise level IT infrastructure, understanding risk management is critical. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, so the first step in risk management is identifying risk. Now, think of this as mapping out the battlefield before you strategize. So here we're asking questions like, what assets are we protecting? What potential threats exist? And are there vulnerabilities in our systems? So for example, a small business might identify outdated firewalls as a vulnerability, while an enterprise might focus on insider threats or compliance risk. This phase relies heavily on data collection, system audits, and brainstorming with cross-functional teams. Now, once the risks are identified, the next step is assessing them. So risk assessment, this helps prioritize risks based on their likelihood and potential impact. There are several types of risk assessments. The first one you have is called an ad hoc risk assessment, and this is conducted as needed, typically in response to a new threat or event. So for instance, you would analyze risk after a major cybersecurity breach in your industry. And then we have reoccurring. So these are scheduled assessments such as quarterly vulnerability scans or annual penetration tests. And then we have a one-time risk assessment, and these assessments occur during unique events like a system upgrade or migration. And then we have continuous risk assessments. And this is an ongoing process that involves real-time monitoring, making it highly effective in dynamic environments. Now that the risks are assessed, it's time to analyze them. And this involves assigning tangible and intangible values to the identified risk. And there are two main approaches. The first one is a qualitative analysis, and this is subjective and based on expert opinions. So for instance, a risk might be rated as high, medium, or low based on its potential impact. Then we have a quantitative analysis, and this is objective and involves numbers. It answers questions like, what will this cost us? And the key metrics for quantitative analysis include the following. You have what is called a single loss expectancy, and this is the cost of a single occurrence of a risk. So for example, if a stolen laptop costs $2,000, that's your single loss expectancy. Then we have what is called an annualized rate of occurrence, and this is the frequency of a risk occurring annually. So an example would be if laptops are stolen twice a year, the annualized rate of occurrence is 2. And then we have the annualized loss expectancy. And this is the total expected loss per year, and it's calculated as follows. So you have the annualized loss expectancy. This equals the single loss expectancy times the annualized rate of occurrence. So in our previous example, that will be $2,000 times 2, which equals $4,000 annually for our annualized loss expectancy. So basically, we expect to lose $4,000 a year off of stolen laptops. And other factors include the following. You have probability. This is the chance of the risk occurring. We have likelihood. This is a broader term that is often tied to environmental or systemic factors. And then we have the exposure factor. This is the percentage of asset loss if the risk occurs. So what is the impact? So impact. This evaluates how disruptive a risk could be to operations, finances, or reputation. So for example, a data breach might cause financial losses, legal penalties, and brand damage. All right, so moving on to risk register. So a risk register, this is essentially your playbook for risk management. It's a living document that tracks identified risks and their statuses. And the key components include the following. We have what are called key risk indicators. And these are metrics that signal the likelihood of a risk materializing. So for instance, a rising number of failed login attempts, this could indicate an impending brute force attack. Then we have what are called risk owners, and these are individuals responsible for monitoring and addressing specific risks. And then we have what is called a risk threshold. This is the maximum level of risk an organization is willing to tolerate, and exceeding this threshold, this can trigger immediate action. Next, we have what is called risk tolerance and appetite. So Risk tolerance and appetite, they define how much risk an organization is willing to take on. It's all about balancing caution with opportunity. So with risk appetite, you have a concept called expansionary, and this is the willingness to take significant risks for growth. Then we have an aspect called conservative. This is minimal risk taking while prioritizing security. Then we have neutral. This is a balanced approach between opportunity and caution. And then we have what is called risk tolerance, and this is the operational side of appetite. So for instance, a company might tolerate up to a 5% system downtime annually. Next, we have risk management strategies. So once risks are identified, assessed, and analyzed, it's time to decide how to handle them. And some of the strategies include the following. So we can transfer the risk. So you can shift the risk to another entity, such as through insurance. You can accept the risk. And under acceptance, you have exemptions. So you can choose not to address the risk if its impact is negligible. Then you have exceptions. So you can document a formal decision to accept a risk temporarily. Also, another strategy, you can avoid the risk. You can eliminate the risk entirely by changing plans or operations. So for example, decommissioning an old system that's prone to attacks, or you can mitigate the risk. So you can reduce the risk likelihood or impact through controls like firewalls, training, or encryption. Next, we have risk reporting. So transparency is vital in risk management. And risk reporting, this ensures that stakeholders are informed. And effective reporting includes the following. It offers clear visuals such as heat maps to show risk levels, updates on mitigation processes, and recommendations for decision makers. And then finally, we have what is called a business impact analysis. So a business impact analysis, this assesses the effects of risk on business operations. And the key metrics include the following. We have what is called the recovery time objective. This is the maximum acceptable downtime for a service. So an example could be an e-commerce site might set an RTO of 4 hours. We have what is called the recovery point objective. This is the maximum acceptable data loss, which is measured in time. An example could be if backups occur every hour, the RPO is 1 hour. Then we have what is called the mean time to repair. And this is the average time to fix a failure. And then we have what is called mean time between failures. And this is the average time between system failures. So in conclusion, risk management is not just a checkbox activity, it's an ongoing process. By mastering these concepts, you're not only protecting your organization, but also enabling it to grow confidently. So remember, in cybersecurity, risks are inevitable, but with a solid management process, they're entirely manageable. Now, with all of that being said, let's do some of this outstanding check on learning. So the first question is, which of the following best describes the purpose of a risk register in the risk management process? Is it defines the organization's risk tolerance and risk appetite? It is a tool used to list and track identified risks, their owners, and mitigation strategies. It quantifies risk impact using single loss expectancy and annualized loss expectancy, or it measures the likelihood and portability of threats. And the correct answer is it is a tool used to list and track identified risks, their owners, and mitigation strategies. So a risk register is a centralized document used to record and manage identified risks. It includes details like the risk description, key risk indicators, risk owners, risk thresholds, and mitigation strategies. This ensures all stakeholders are aware of the risks and their statuses. Next question. What is the primary difference between risk appetite and risk tolerance? Is it risk appetite is the maximum risk an organization is willing to take, while risk tolerance is the acceptable level of deviation from its risk threshold? Is it risk tolerance applies only to financial risks, while risk appetite applies to all organizational risks? Is it risk appetite focuses on specific risks, whereas risk tolerance is a high-level strategy? Or is it risk tolerance is fixed, while risk appetite changes frequently based on market conditions? And the correct answer is risk appetite is the maximum risk an organization is willing to take, while risk tolerance is the acceptable level of deviation from its risk threshold. So, risk appetite is the overall amount of risk an organization is willing to accept to achieve its objectives, often described in broad terms. Risk tolerance is narrower and refers to the acceptable variance from predefined risk thresholds from specific risks. And our final question, which of the following is an example of a quantitative risk analysis metric? Is it probability of occurrence? Is it annualized loss expectancy? Is it key risk indicators? Or is it a risk register? And the correct answer is it is an annualized loss expectancy. So, quantitative risk analysis uses numerical metrics to assess risks, such as single loss expectancy, annualized loss expectancy, and annualized rate of occurrence. Annualized loss expectancy is calculated as single loss expectancy times the annualized rate of occurrence, which estimates the financial impact of a risk over a year.